go to get all cleaned up and put away.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome. My name is Caleb, and I'm an advocate here at Gald Advocacy. And oh my gosh, it is 12 o'clock on the dot. We are not late today, which I'm really happy about. It is the first stream of 2026. So happy New Year to everybody. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. We've got a nice topic today, a very important one. I think that this last year was a very interesting one when it comes to one of my favorite topics, IHSS. And so I'm excited to share a little bit about, I'm excited for us because I know Nicole's going to be going live at 1 o'clock in Spanish. So if you speak Spanish, please check her stream out as well. We're excited to talk a little bit about how we can maybe prepare for 2026 this whole year when it comes to protecting your IHSS. And that's going to be the topic for today. I'm gonna put that up here on the screen. We've got a good chunk of people here. Welcome to those of you who are just tuning in. Like always, if you've been here before, you know the drill. Drop a comment, say hello, let me know who the heck you are, where you're coming from, and what's going on in your life. And of course, if you have questions, please feel free to drop a question whenever you have one. I love turning all of our live streams into more of Q&As. Makes things easier for me because I love to talk and converse with people back and forth rather than just stick it to a strict outline, which we do have today. We do have a little bit of a note for me to follow in regards to some of the things we want to tackle and prep you guys for 2026. So don't forget to like and share this stream. Let me find the overlay here that I want to put. Oh my gosh, where did it go? Hold the phone. I think it's right here. What the heck? Hang on. If you can like the stream, share it, tag a friend, tag a support group. That goes a long ways. Oh, wait, I think this is it. There it is, guys. There it is. So like it, love it, share it, or don't. That's fine too. But we've got a really good chunk of people watching today already. So stick around. We can go ahead and, we've already got several comments. Hello, everybody. John from YouTube. Nice. Again, we're trying to grow our YouTube channel as well. I know we've been streaming from Facebook for such a long time. And thankfully with this new streaming platform that we're using, it allows us to go to Facebook and YouTube and even Instagram and things like that. But we're just going to try and stick to Facebook and YouTube for now. Brittany, hello to you. Hello to you. What game are you playing? I'm not playing a game. Kuta, hi. I'm still waiting on the judge's decision since October 9th. Yeah, so we'll definitely talk a little bit about that today as well. For those of you who are, I'm assuming with Kuta here, you're referring to a decision with IHSS. IHSS decisions this last year, it's been quite the thing to experience. This year, we noticed a really crazy trend that we didn't think would be a thing for the whole year, and it was the fact that these judges' decisions and the appeal processes would take so long. There are some deadlines, like within the rules that talk about when a decision from a judge needs to be made. And those were thrown out the window all year long, and they still are. The amount of appeals that we have with families that we're working with, that we're still waiting on their hearing to be scheduled, waiting on a decision from a judge, it's bonkers. We've had people who have had to wait 6 months for a decision or even longer. It's crazy. So normally the process is, a typical appeals process normally could take, 3, 4, maybe 5 months. That would be like a really standard process. Maybe it got rescheduled once or twice, but right now, it's a 6 to 12 month process for some people. That's becoming the new average, which is, it's shocking. So Kuta, hang in there. I'm hoping and praying for you that it'll come soon. Rosita, happy Friday to you. Happy 2026. Man, it is wild. It is wild. I have yet to write the year down on anything yet. I am totally infamous for taking a couple of months before remembering to write the next year. So I for sure will mess up the first or second time I have to do it. Happy New Year to you, Ernie. Hello. All right. Let's see here. So yeah, if you have a question, please let me know. Feel free to drop a comment. Let us know what's going on in your life. Let me know if you have a question in regards to IHSS, our regional center, special education. We could talk about it all today, but we've got a really good chunk of people. We're just going to go ahead and jump into our topic, okay? So our topic for today is going to be documenting for your IHSS case and keeping continuity within your documentation. So a really big common question we get often is, what type of evidence is IHSS looking for, specifically for things like protective supervision? And so if you're not familiar with IHSS or protective supervision, really quick, that's a benefit we talk about almost weekly here on Facebook. But it is a caregiving benefit for people with special needs, people who are disabled, people who require caregiving support that can have a caregiver paid through by Medi-Cal. So a lot of the people that come and here on these streams, probably a lot of you today, all 31 of you so far who are here, not all, but several are parents or loved ones caring for a loved one who's disabled. And if that person has Medi-Cal, then you as the caregiver can be paid to do so, right? That's IHSS. And so protective supervision is the big part. That's a big category of IHSS, which is reserved for people who need constant supervision because they don't understand how to keep themselves safe. They are a danger to themselves in some ways because of their cognitive limitations. And so we're going to talk a little bit about proving why that may be, because when you are trying to pursue protective supervision, you do have to have some evidence to back that up. And so we're going to jump into that today. Chloe, Happy New Year to you. Glad you're here. Shannon, hi and Happy New Year to you. Let me know how your 2025 was, everybody. I am curious. Tell me all about it, or don't. It's okay too. Kuda said, last time I spoke with you, he wasn't diagnosed with pica yet, but now he is. So that's a big change for sure. And it may not help with the decision that you're waiting on because it's come after everything that's happened, right? But it's definitely something to bring up in future assessments. You can even bring it up now to IHSS since it's a relatively recent change, and it's a big one. A pica diagnosis is a big change. All right. So let me know if anybody has any questions. I'm going to just go ahead and jump into the topic, but I will go back and forth between your questions. Okay. So like I mentioned, when pursuing protective supervision, whether it be at an like an annual assessment, or maybe it's your very first assessment, you have to be prepared to provide documentation to show proof as to why this person needs protective supervision. Okay. And so we get asked a lot, like, what does that evidence look like, right? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Do I need to get this report, that report, whatever? I want to keep it really simple today. So there is a little bit of a formula, of course, that we use with like our families that we work with, but this is something that, we've implemented for the last, 15 plus years working with families here, called advocacy. So for you as an individual, I like to keep it really simple. All right. You don't need 100 pieces of evidence, right? If you're going in front of a judge, you're preparing for a hearing, or maybe your assessment is next month and you're trying to push for protective supervision, or you have protective supervision and you're trying to keep it at the next assessment, right? There's a few very important things that you have to have. Not 100 important things or 100 half important things, a few really important things and a few really important points that you have to follow. And we're going to go over those today. Kelly, we got denied PS from the social worker was lying under oath, even though I have tons of documentation otherwise stating it all depends on your social worker. I'm sorry that happened. I have experienced times where social workers lie under oath. Unfortunately, not too much you can do. They don't really get held to a certain standard under oath. But I'm really sorry that happened. That's really frustrating. And if you provided a bunch of evidence, that's actually going to go in line with what we're going to talk about today. I'm sure that because you can have a lot of evidence, you can testify perfectly, You can have a perfect case for protective supervision and still get denied. There's a lot of factors that you can't control, like a social worker lying under oath, right? That's not something you can control. And a lot of times there's nothing you can really do about it. If the social worker lies under oath and the judge wants and the judge kind of eats up what they're saying, the judges will rarely ever call the social worker a liar unless they're saying something that completely contradicts the evidence, right? But you're welcome to connect with us, Kelly. I'd love to try and help you out if we can. Denise, what do you recommend after judge denying PS and paramedical because of self-redirect? So self-direction is the term that they use, self-direction, which means they have the ability to assess danger. What do you do after the judge denies it? Use the denial as a blueprint and start gathering and rebuild your case. You have to reconstruct it. And if you need help with that, let us know. Kelly, look into a writ. Good luck with that. I'm happy to chat with you about it if you have questions. The writ, for those of you who don't know, that's when you send a denial to Superior Court for a new ruling. Rosita, 2025 was a rough year for me, praying for a better year. We'll be praying for you too, Rosita. Thanks for sharing. All right. So I know there's a lot of questions here, so I'm going to try and go back and forth. Okay. So continuity with evidence. All right. So again, a couple of specific things. So like some people do, they might provide a lot of different pieces of evidence, a lot of different documentation, and even videos and photos and things like that. I want to keep it really simple. Okay. There's a few things that you have to know when you're presenting evidence and what you should gather. Okay. Number one is going to be the IEP. If the child that you're working with, if it's a minor and they're in school, they're in a special day class, if they have an IEP, get the IEP ready. Okay. And what I mean by ready, I'm not talking about have it ready on your table. I'm talking about getting it ready, making sure that what the IEP says is in line with the regulations of protective supervision and is in line with the reality of what's happening at home. Okay. So the IEP oftentimes will not talk about certain behavioral or maladaptive behaviors that are happening at home because you're not a lot of times bringing these up at school. They're not a problem at school, right? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. If you are using your IEP as one of the many pieces of evidence for protective supervision, it needs to mention things like eloping. It needs to mention things like pica, I think it was Kuta mentioned earlier, right? It needs to mention these really important things because if you're presenting this information to the social worker verbally at your assessment or to a judge in a hearing, but then they look at the IEP and they're like, well, how come the school doesn't have like any mention of these things? If these things are so important for the purpose of protective supervision, wouldn't you think to maybe bring that up to the school? And then in your mind, maybe you have, or maybe you haven't brought it up to the school, right? Regardless, they're not going to typically include a lot of those things in the IEP because that's not what the IEP is for, right? So just to kind of quickly go over some of the documents that you need to have, keeping it simple, okay? The IEP with school, very, very important, especially if the social workers ask for it or a judge asks for it. The IPP with regional center. If your child or your loved one is a client to the regional center, regardless of what their age is, if they're a minor or an adult, get the IPP ready as well. Now, these are two very important documents, right? These are two of probably the most important things outside of the protective supervision, which we'll do next. But these are kind of like the tippy top of evidence, quote unquote, to a social worker, because that's how they're trained. These social workers are trained to ask for these two things if the child has these two things, because they're going to be the least biased in a way. It's coming from the regional center. It's coming from the school. These are that know this child better than anybody else outside of you for the most part, right? Unless the child has ABA or weekly therapy or, some type of program that they attend to, then that would be the third thing right there. If you have documentation from those areas like ABA, make sure you gather all of these three things, right? These are going to be the three probably most important pieces. Okay. Next, you of course have your protective supervision form. If you don't know, that's the SOC 821. The SOC 821 is the assessment of need for protective supervision. This form is the one that it talks about memory, orientation, and judgment. All right. Get the doctor to fill this one out. For those of you who probably will ask if you haven't asked already, yes, it can be completed by any licensed physician. It doesn't have to be the primary care physician. It doesn't have to be the neurologist. It can be anybody in that space. I just would want to probably get it done by a doctor who knows the child or knows the loved one that you're applying for. Okay. And sure, could you get one from the optometrist or the dentist? Technically, yes. Look very good to IHSS. So I probably wouldn't go that route. I'd probably stick with like the pediatrician or the primary care physician or a psychiatrist or psychologist that might be treating this loved one, right? Or a neurologist, right? Things like that. Okay. So now that we have these, we don't need anything else so far, right? We're just keeping it really simple. You can build a very strong case with these four things. That could may be all you really need, right? Of course, this is going to be the meat and potatoes. This is the meat and potatoes. Anything else that you get on top of this, like photos, videos, or a daily log that you write, that is the gravy to the meat and potatoes. But again, we can't have gravy as its own meal, right? It's not going to work. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people will present their hazard log that they worked really hard on all year to give this to the social worker, thinking that that's going to give them or keep protective supervision. And it's not. Okay. Especially the way that most people will write their own behavioral report at home. A lot of times it's not going to include the things that it actually needs to include for the purpose of protective supervision. So that is gravy. That's the stuff that has to go on top of the meat and potato documents, the IEP, the IPP, the behavioral documents or like therapy reports. And then, of course, the SOC 821, the protective supervision form. Okay. You, of course, want to gather like police reports and things like that, too. So if you have a child or a loved one who's an eloper or they've engaged in certain behaviors where they've had to go to the ER, right? If these behaviors that they've had that have caused an injury of some sort, you gather the police report, gather the ER report, any type of document that shows proof of that incident occurring, as long as it matches up with like something that correlates with protective supervision as a reason for protective supervision, wonderful. That's another piece right there, right? Okay, so now that we have all these things, something really important, which is the whole point of this topic today, right? Continuity. We want everything to read the same. Something that people often do, and it's not your fault. It's how it goes. When you have these really powerful pieces of evidence, it is hard to get them all to say the same thing because these are all different environments by different professionals, different people in this child's life or this loved one's life. But I will warn you, if all of these things say different things, you are going to have conflicting evidence. You're going to make it more challenging for a social worker or for a judge to see the need for protective supervision or for the other hours, whatever the heck you're trying to get with IHSS. And so that's going to be really important, right? Okay, so we'll take a quick break from that. We've got several comments here. I just want to make sure I keep up with everybody. Thank you all for being here so much. You guys are amazing. If you're new here, welcome. Happy New Year. We do this every Friday, or at least we try to. It's either myself or Dakota from our office or Nicole who goes live at Woodsmith. So welcome if you're brand new here. Please take a moment to share this stream or like it or tag a friend or tag a support group that you follow that might need this information. V, ever change needs to be reported. Oh, every change needs to be reported. Excuse me. My mom's dementia got worse and got her on protective supervision. Yes, I had evidence from the doctor, a family member, and a friend who has seen her decline. I also had police reports of an incident that got hurt bad. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is super helpful, and I'm sorry that you're, having to experience mom's dementia here. I know how difficult that can be from a personal note, and so that is. Sorry, just rereading your comment, make sure I understand correctly. So you got the protective supervision, and you utilized some great evidence, is what it looks like, and so that's wonderful. So good job. So everybody give Ms. V a thumbs up and a congratulations on getting protective supervision. There are some people who work on trying to get protective supervision for years and have a really hard time, right? And so what's important is she mentioned, certain pieces of evidence, which can be really powerful. Now, this evidence is going to be different, right? This is for, somebody who is probably on the other elderly side with dementia, right? That's very different than maybe a lot of you who are watching who have maybe a child with autism, right? The evidence will look very different. So obviously you couldn't get an IEP or an IPP for a grandparent or an elderly parent of yours, right? So those things you wouldn't be able to get, but V got creative, right? She got evidence from a family member, a friend, right, who has seen her decline, right? Even though technically that's like gravy documentation, for her case, that could be prime rib evidence, right? That could be the meal, along with, of course, police reports, an incident log. Wonderful job, V. Congratulations. Good job. All right, Ernie, why does it seem like everyone's PS is getting taken away? So that is definitely a big part of the closeout of 2025, right? So we saw a major reduction in protective supervision approvals, and a major reduction in approvals, a much higher increase in denials, and a skyrocketing amount of removals of protective supervision. So we definitely took notice of this early on in the year, and it just got worse. 2025 was a pretty miserable year for protective supervision. IHSS and the social workers, they are really pressured right now. They are really putting a lot of pressure on specifically protective supervision. Yes, IHSS and as a whole, of course, but specifically protective supervision. So we are seeing so many people who have had it approved for years, wake up one day to a new social worker, and this new social worker decides that they've done, just such an incredible assessment compared to all the other times, that this person no longer needs protective supervision. And so if that was you, please let us know. I know I haven't gotten all the comments yet, but please reach out, connect with us. We'd love to chat with you about this, and see how we might be able to help you either get it back or see if it's justified, right? Because, of course, protective supervision is not going to be for everybody. And there are some times where somebody may qualify for it and then next year not qualify for it. And so if that is the case, that's a celebration on its own, right? But if it was removed or denied wrongfully, we want to help you. We want to try and see what we can do for you. V again, hey, Kelly. Oh, you're responding to Kelly. Perfect. Kuta, my son's social worker wrote her case narrative that he was dressed appropriately. He wasn't wearing a shirt that day because he chews on his shirts. I told her that also, and she lied on her case narrative. It's definitely not fun to go through an experience like that, which I have had many of assessments with, families that I've worked with, where very similar situations would happen. And so that's why it's important to do everything you can to eliminate the possibility of a social worker lying or something like this even occurring, right? Having witnesses or working with an advocate for representation to join you with these assessments, it can really mitigate what just happened. And I'm really sorry that you've had to go through that, Kuta. Thank you so much for sharing, by the way. I know it's probably not the most fun thing to talk about, but it really could be really helpful to those who might have experienced this themselves or need to prepare so that they don't go through the same challenge. Kelly said schools also lie. Well, everything is money motivated when it comes to the world of special needs, everybody. Okay. We've talked about the special needs dark cloud in the past for many streams. I bring it up on as many phone calls as I can. The dark cloud is real. And this is something that you go when you are a parent or a loved one of somebody who's disabled. At the end of the day, nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your special needs loved one or your disabled loved one. IHSS doesn't care. The judges don't care. The schools don't care. You are just another financial burden to them, right? Unfortunately. And I hate to say it that way, but you have to be just like them in a way. You have to be cutthroat. If you want to be the best advocate for your loved one, you have to be a little cutthroat. And if you can understand that, it's going to come down to money a lot of the times. It'll allow you to advocate a little bit differently. Lying you can't avoid, though. You can hold people accountable, right? That's what we do. Like if we present an assessment, we have ways to make sure that if they try and lie, that'll be the last time they ever do it at your house. That's for sure. For school, real quick, record every IEP meeting you ever have. That'll also eliminate a lot of the lying. Record every IEP meeting. Tell them ahead of time, right? Having your IEP meetings recorded, every single one of them can go a long ways. Trust me. I think V, you are responding to somebody else's question. Oh my goodness, so many questions, guys. You guys are amazing. Love it. So real quick, going back to today's topic for a moment. Okay, so we kind of talked about, I would say, the big important piece there, right? Which is going to be the continuity. So I'm going to go back to having this up on the screen here. So again, when you gather these pieces of evidence, you can't just present evidence and hope that the social workers will interpret it correctly, a judge would interpret it correctly. You have to remember that you're working with people from IHSS, you're working with people from the state who don't have, most of the time, they won't have real direct training or understanding of the disability that your loved one has. Okay. So a lot of times you will meet with a social worker, they come to your home and they've never really even been around children with autism. And that may be your case, right? You may have a child with autism that you're trying to get protective supervision for, and the social worker who is supposed to come in here and appropriately assess for protective supervision doesn't even understand, some of the basics of autism, right? You have to be prepared and ready that if you're going to give something like an IEP to this person, they're only going to know what they know and what they've been taught from their counties. Been taught to look for the inconsistencies in the IEP, right? They're taught to look for and say, hey, if mom mentions that her little Johnny is an eloper, if she says my little Johnny elopes every day he is trying to elope, but you find in the IEP that it doesn't mention it at all. Or maybe it says something like little Johnny has had a history of eloping, but we've made some goals around it and he's doing so much better this year. We've eliminated a lot of the elopement attempts. What's the social worker going to think? The social worker just heard you say that little Johnny elopes every day. But school is saying it's not much of a concern anymore, right? Now, I'd say a lot of people also aren't aware of how the IPP works when it comes to this specific information as well. If you haven't read your IPP cover to cover, have gone through some of the behavioral questions or the safety questions in that document, a lot of times when it comes to the question of specifically elopement, where it says, is elopement a behavior this child has? If it's not something you've really brought up to the regional center before, maybe you've mentioned it in passing, but you've never harped on it. You've never talked about the severity of it. Most of the time, it'll say elopement occurs, but less than once a month. I can't tell you how many times I've read that on an IPP with regional center, that exact wording. It'll say elopes, but less than once a month. And if you're like, well, wait a minute, my little Johnny tries to elope every single chance he gets, every single day. He's trying to run out the door. He's trying to open up the car when we're driving on the freeway, right? IHSS is only going to use the information that's given to them. Your testimony verbally is the least important piece of evidence. Okay, whatever, they will always take a back seat to what the IEP says, what the IPP from regional center says, what the doctor says, what ABA says. So just remember that. Remember that whatever you're verbally going to say to IHSS or verbally say to the judge, if you have to go in front of a judge, it better match what the documentation says. Because if you say something different, you have conflicting evidence. Your testimony is not reliable in that scenario. Really important, okay? Keep it consistent. Francis, I had to withdraw my child from school because the school wasn't providing the appropriate support to keep my child safe in school. We have evidence and everything of why we had to withdraw. So no school and won't have any more updated IEPs. We don't plan on putting her back in school. We will be homeschooling. Fantastic choice. I'm sorry you've had to go through that. I am an absolute, excuse me. I just can't talk today, guys. Too much coffee. I'm speaking before thinking. Francis, I'm a big cheerleader of homeschooling. I'm so glad you get to do that. It may not be a choice though. It sounds like it's a little bit forced at the moment, but it can be a wonderful option. It could be an incredible option for you guys. I don't know, but I really hope that it goes well. And in regards to not having the IEP anymore, so if you're homeschooling within the school district, like using their curriculum and like the homeschooling umbrella for the public school district in your area, they can keep IEPs in place. You can keep the IEP. They don't have to be a student physically like in class at that school. And so something to consider that if you're going to keep the IEP rolling, you most certainly can. You could continue to have your meetings. You can continue to bring up to the school what the child may need. Because if they're at home doing homeschool, you could still get like accommodations from the school, even though they're learning at home. So there's a lot of things you could do. And so if you want some help, if you're new to homeschooling, it is definitely going to be a lot more unique for somebody with an IEP or somebody with special needs than it would be for a neurotypical child. So if you need help with that, call our office. We have some amazing, amazing people who know all there is to know about it, including Myra Galt herself, the founder of Galt Advocacy. She homeschooled a lot of her kids for many, many years. Kuta, my son's IEP, IPP, ABA session notes, teacher statement, and ABA treatment, child development, all talked about it. He was still denied because he was still denied being a normal, typical 3-year-old. Cognitive of a 2-month-old also gave her that doctor still denied the position statement saying that he was self-directing. Okay, so another thing to kind of go back on reflecting of 2025, and it's been this way for a while now, but getting protective supervision for any child under the age of 5 is becoming extremely difficult, even with perfect evidence. Okay, and I'll explain why. There's 5 criteria questions for minors when it comes to protective supervision. 5. 1, is this person mentally impaired? Well, in this case, sure, yes, the child has autism, right? Question number 2, are they considered non-self-directed? Well, you would say they're non-self-directed, but what does that even mean? Most people will say yes to that when I ask them that. I'll say, hey, is your child self-directed or non-self-directed? They'll say absolutely non-self-directed, and then they have no idea what that actually means. It's not your fault. Most social workers don't even know what it means. Child non-self-directed, meaning due to the mental impairment, are they unable to assess danger appropriately? Therefore, are they engaging in potentially dangerous activities? Every social worker is going to argue, and every judge is going to argue that all 3-year-olds are non-self-directed in some ways, with or without a diagnosis. How do you argue? How do you oppose that? All 3-year-olds are going to not be able to assess danger. All 3-year-olds are going to engage in dangerous behaviors. And I agree. I agree with that to some extent. It's hard to object to that if you don't understand the regulations. So we're going to come through my madness. Just keep in mind all this, okay? Question number 3 out of the criteria for minors. Is this person physically capable of placing themselves in danger? Well, if your child can walk, run, jump, climb, pick things up, put things down, they're not bedbound or paralyzed, then they can physically put themselves in danger. Question number 4, does this child require far greater supervision than what's considered typical at this age? Well, you could say yes to that, but it's going to be subjective. Whatever you say has to be backed up by the professionals in their life. The professionals in their life have to talk about what you talked about here, Kuta. They have to explicitly say, like, hey, this child engages in this behavior. That's very different compared to what's typical, right? So if you say yes to that, we're moving on. Question number 5, does this child require 24-hour supervision in order for them to remain safe? Now, if you answer yes to that question and you have a 3-year-old, the next response, the next question that any social worker or any judge will ask you is, well, don't all 3-year-olds need 24-hour supervision to remain safe? What you're going to say next is, yes, but my little Johnny, my little Timmy will do this. He doesn't sleep during the night. I have to wake up even during the night. He will engage in this behavior that's way different than a typical child. That's question number 4. That's question number 4. We already know little Timmy or little Johnny needs more supervision than a typical child. We already know they're engaging in behaviors that aren't typical. So how do you answer question number 5? Does this individual need 24-hour supervision to remain safe? If you say yes, of course, then they would say, well, of course, you're right. Yes, he's 3. All 3-year-olds need it, right? So obviously, this is an impossible conversation to have. This is not something that you most of the time will be able to appropriately object to and come up with a winnable argument. That's why 90% of all 3-year-olds get denied protective supervision. And that's not an exact percentage. I don't know the exact percentage, so don't quote me on it, but that is why most do, because you can't answer those 5 questions correctly. Those are all the criteria questions for protective supervision for children. So if you can understand these questions, and if you can understand some of the basic rules of protective supervision, you can overcome those questions. But here's the really crummy part, everybody. I'll teach you this objection really fast, just really quickly, really simply, okay? The last question of, well, don't all 3-year-old, does this child need 24-hour supervision to remain safe? And if the follow-up question to that is, will all children need 24-hour supervision to remain safe? The way you respond is, so what? That's not one of the 5 qualifying criteria questions. One of the biggest rules of IHSS or protective supervision 101. What is it, everybody? You can't deny somebody based on their age, right? So if they say, well, don't all 3-year-olds need 24-hour supervision? Sure. But that's not the question, right? Now, that is a very basic way of objecting. You have to know how to use the Russian favor to explain that in a way that's going to convince a social worker or a judge that this 3-year-old actually requires significantly more supervision than what's typical. And that's a very hard argument to make. Okay. Sorry, guys. I have been on a rant. We'll continue. Thanks for being here, Kuta. V, wow, I'm so sorry. This is so frustrating. Please don't give up. Okay. Sorry. I keep clicking your comment. I know you're having a conversation between somebody else. Denise, I had an IEP, ABA regional and disability rights helped me with my letter and still got denied. My daughter is 5 with lupus and autism. So you could do everything right. You can have all of the perfect evidence. You could do everything that we just talked about. You can overcome those 5 questions, right, and answer them perfectly and still get denied. So Denise, you may not have done anything wrong. You may have done everything wonderfully. And congratulations for seeking advice from all of these different environments like you shared, because that would help. That should help. But that doesn't give you a guarantee that you're going to win. Protect supervision specifically. Everything, all the stars can be aligned and you could still get denied because of the factors you can't control. And one of the things we can't control is the judges, the social workers, the appeals reps, the state, the county. They are all really, really pressured and pushed right now to deny and remove protective supervision. Why that is, we can't really talk about. We can't really discuss it. But they are, and they're doing it. And so they will twist anything, any piece of evidence that you have, it can be twisted and misinterpreted. So just know that. Sometimes it's not about your lack of effort. Most of the times it's not. Most of the time people don't put themselves through an appeal process or even just the IHSS process and not try really hard. Most people try really hard. So just know that it's a little bit of a rigged system right now. And I'm hoping for 2026 to be a little bit better. Alma, Happy New Year to you. Welcome. Hello, Chris from YouTube. We've got, okay, so most everybody's back on Facebook now. For a while, we had like a split. I was watching the YouTube versus Facebook. It was kind of a split. So, but now it's mostly Facebook. That's okay too. Welcome, Chris. And sorry, I'm really behind on the comments, everybody. Francis, I unfortunately have 15 pages of incident. School setting, parent was never notified, and that's just a month of September. Part of the reason why I pulled her. Serious safety concerns, eloping, scissors involved, almost stabbing herself by accident, and self-injurious behaviors like biting her own arm. It's sad the school sometimes are who least understand your child. I'm really sorry that she's had to go through that, and it can be, you're right, very frustrating and unfortunate. And so hopefully the decision to pull her is go a long ways for you guys. I'm hoping and praying for that. Sarah, Happy New Year to you, and hello. Kuta, social worker said his ABA session notes were not needed and will not upload into his case. So I will take a moment for just a second. I promise I won't rant. Quick tip, everybody. Whatever you want to provide as evidence, if you feel that it's important, like an ABA session, notes from a session, if you feel that it's important, IHSS can't reject it. They may not want to use it as evidence, but they deny taking it. That's wrong. So if you say, hey, I have this letter here, I want you to review it when you have time to help with your decision. If they sit there and say, ooh, I don't need that. No, A 78? Nope. It's not the IEP. It's not the IPP. And it's not the SOC from the doctor. I don't want to see it. They can't do that. That's not how it works. So you did a fantastic job, Kuta, assuming that what was said in that in the notes were actually helpful for protect supervision, assuming that be the case. They said it was not uploaded in his case because it was used at the hearing. Because used it at the hearing. I don't understand that. Sorry. It was mainly cherry picking certain dates. Admitted to the judge, she verbally denied during intake. Also, can't do that. Application dated May 2025. Hearing representative used his October 2024 ABA 6-month report, and I gave her a 2025 month report. County position statement. I pointed out to the judge, and the judge asked why. She said she must have missed it because, okay, so I can't read the rest of the comment. Sorry, Kuta. We'll come back to you. Oh, good. I was going to ask this as well. I've been on protect supervision for 3.5 years. My question is, if nothing has changed, then why would a social worker take it away? Yeah, so sorry, I didn't see Ernie's question. I guess that was your question, V. Sorry. So if nothing has changed, then it's not. So I'm frustrated thinking about it as well, because you're right? If nothing's changed, then why should they take it away, right? But the reality is even if there hasn't been a visual change, there could be a slight change in the documentation. There could be a slight change in what you say, right? Social workers, they can get a little sneaky sometimes. They can ask you a question at the assessment that was asked a certain way the previous year. Maybe they asked it a little bit differently this time. So that means you answered it a little bit differently. And that right there, boom, can incite the change. And it could be a change big enough for them to think that protect supervision could be removed. So continuity with your evidence to get protective supervision and keep it will be the same for your testimony every year when you're discussing protective supervision to try and keep it. Rosita, I'm very nervous about my reassessment this month. Every year I have a new social worker. Connect with us, Rosita. We'd love to help you out with it. For those of you who want representation or want some stability during these assessments, that's what advocates are for. We'd love to help you. We'd love to join you for these meetings every year if you want us to, and we can help you with it. But have your evidence be consistent, Rosita. Whatever you're presenting as evidence, make sure it's consistent with what's actually happening and what you're testifying to every single year. I would go ahead and get a new SOC 821 as well. So I used to not recommend this. I used to not really care because it wasn't super important. But right now, IHSS, because of how unpredictable they're being, I would make sure to get a new SOC 821 from the doctor every year. So every year, if you can just print out a copy online, go to the doctor, have it fill it out. If you know that nothing is different from the previous, if the doctor checks severe in memory, severe in orientation, severe in judgment, and nothing's changed, then tell the doctor nothing has changed, and they can answer the form the same way they did last year. Chris, my daughter has Down syndrome. She also has a G-tube. She scored high on her assessment. Is that gonna lessen our chances once she turns 3? She scored high on her assessment. I'm not sure. Which assessment are you referring to, Chris? Francis, currently have max hours with IHSS. I feel like I am a strong advocate, but I want to know if you guys represent clients who currently have services. Yes, we do. Absolutely. So if you already have IHSS, you already have protect supervision, and you just want help keeping it, we absolutely can help you with that as well. So if you're interested in more advocacy, please reach out to our office. We'd love to chat with you. Oh, it was the assessment to get IHSS. Okay, duh. Sorry. Let's go back to your question, Chris. Okay, my daughter has Down syndrome. She scored high on her assessment. I don't know what they told you with that. If a social worker said they scored high on their assessment with IHSS, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't really apply. You can't. It's not a pass or fail type of assessment. So I'm not sure what that is. And again, I'm not laughing at you. I'm wondering what the heck the social worker is referring to. Is this going to lessen our chances once she turns 3? So if she's already below the age of 3, getting protective supervision is going to be really hard anyway. So just remember that there's a really good chance you're going to get denied. And on top of that, your daughter also has Down syndrome. Sorry, excuse me. IHSS loves to pick on people with Down syndrome. I'm just going to say that. I know a lot of social workers, not a lot, there's probably a couple who occasionally watch these streams. We have been contacted by some, but if you are a social worker, I'm obviously not talking to you, whoever you're watching. A lot of workers with IHSS love to pick on people with Down syndrome because Down syndrome is a really easy one. It's either going to be one or two ways they'll pick on somebody with Down syndrome. One, they'll have some pretty severe medical conditions, similar to your daughter, Chris, or they'll be more of a teddy bear. They'll be the sweetest little kiddo on the planet, the cutest face, cutest everything. And this is how could this child ever need protective supervision? They're perfect in every way, right? You can be so medically fragile to the point where you can't qualify for protective supervision. You can also be, so cute and cuddly to the point where they would just assume it's a typical child, right? It's kind of a weird situation. But yes, if the social worker had your assessment and is claiming that your child scored really high on your assessment, then they're probably planning on denying protective supervision or denying IHSS in general. But if your child has a G tube, automatically they should get some IHSS hours. I will tell you that right now. Daniel, are we still refusing to give them our IEP? We are never refusing to give them the IEP. That is never something you want to do. You can if you want to. In the past, we've mentioned, I'd say not giving it to them unless it's asked for. So I would never encourage you to withhold information or evidence. If a social worker or a judge is requesting the IEP, you should give it to them. If you say no, at the very worst, the judge will subpoena, right? But a lot of times what we'll see is you'll say, no, I'm not providing that. It's not helpful. Then a lot of times judges or social, they'll deny because you didn't provide them with enough evidence. So that's why what's more important to do is just to make sure the IEP is already being built to help you with your case. Don't let it be a reason you get denied. Or try and do your best to not let it be a reason. If you need help with it, if you don't know what your IEP needs to say, connect with us. We'd love to help you. Kuda, social worker kept told me 2 different times, and also told the judge that she has 5-year ABA experience and was a lead trained ABA. My son is normal, typical 3-year-old. His Alta was witnessed and told the judge she has 13 years working with child development and has met my son, and he's not typical. That's very common too. So I'm sorry that you had to experience that, Kuta. Yes, I've heard that 1,000 times too, where social workers put their experience like being an ABA tech as a reason why they are the perfect person to assess for protective supervision. But that's wrong. It's wrong to do. Now, of course, if you want to use this information, being a social worker, if you have experience with ABA, that can be helpful and useful, right? But if you are somebody who has spent 5 years as an ABA tech, then you understand how important the testimony of a regional center caseworker is. If a regional center caseworker, especially somebody who's had 13 years over your 5 years working in child development, I would say there's probably a reason you're no longer working in ABA, huh? There's probably a reason you're now a social worker with a county and not an ABA technician. I'll just leave it at that. Jamel, hello to you. Scott, should we be preparing for hours OT reductions for the 2026-2027 fiscal budget? When will the new IHSS budget be announced for next year? The budget doesn't really change much. There's usually proposals to change it, but to my understanding, I can't really speak on the budget itself. Thankfully, we have, there's not too much right now from what we know. Teresa said, if it doesn't support your case, then yes. I think you're referring to the IEP, right? So again, of course, anything that doesn't support your case, don't give it to IHSS unless they ask for it, right? If they're asking for something like the IEP, but UOD is under construction, it's not super helpful right now, then you would want to probably say that. You'd probably want to say that. You can say you have the right to withhold any piece of evidence. You don't have to give them the IEP if you really, truly don't want to. But again, the likelihood that they're just going to deny because you refuse to give them important pieces of evidence is very high. What can you do about it? Not too much. That's why, again, just try and get it now. Get it to a point now where it'll be helpful for your case. So you don't have to experience that or go through that, right? But like Teresa's saying, if it doesn't support your case, yes, don't give it unless they are demanding for it. That's what I would do. Or prepare them, say, hey, I'll give you the IEP, but just a heads up, it's under construction right now. Things have changed. The school has we're kind of going back and forth right now with some of the verbiage on here. We disagree with some of the things that the school's saying. So take it with a grain of salt. Some social workers, when they hear that, they'll be understanding of it. But most social workers that I work with don't care. They're just going to take whatever the IEP says to heart. So it's a little bit of a gamble, but Lucy, question. I had my reassessment on number, but I have not received a copy of the notice of action. How can I get a copy? You have to contact the county. So I would contact the county immediately. Not immediately. I'm sorry, November. Yes, that wasn't too long ago. So if it's only been about a month or two, I would just follow up with the county and just say, hey, I had our assessment at this time. I haven't received anything yet. They should be able to look up the status and let you know if you've been, if the social worker has completed the NOA or not. Tamara, many homeschool for IEPs also. Yes, they do. That's right. I'm going to try and speed through your comments. There's so many, guys, and we only have a few more minutes. Kuda, he's determined disabled at 2 years old by SSI also. Yeah, documentation from SSI. All the more reason why that social worker who put their ABA status above everything else, whatever. Francis, you oppose it with cognitive age. Not sure. Sorry, Francis. I think you're probably responding to somebody else's comment. I wish it would tell me that. I wish for some reason, I don't know why the comments don't tell me. Christina, my son is 18 and doesn't want to go to school anymore. I get 107 IHSS hours, no protective supervision. Can I request protective supervision hours and or add more hours? Yes to both of those questions if your son qualifies for these things. And so if you want to take a little bit of a deep dive into if he needs more hours or if he qualifies for protective supervision, call my office, get on my calendar. I'd love to chat with you. V, I'm supposed to move in with my boyfriend this year and getting married to him at the end of the year. Will that affect my mom's medical because of his high income? To my understanding, no. If it's an elderly individual, it should be just their income. But if you have questions, you can reach out to Medi-Cal Consulting Services. A friend of Galt Advocacy, it's Medi-Cal experts. Give them a call. Christina, he has Down syndrome, intellectual disability, and he is nonverbal. Yes, Christina, I would love for you to call me. I know Down syndrome very, very well. Been around Down syndrome my whole life. I have three adult siblings who have Down syndrome, who all have protective supervision. And so I'd love to chat with you about and I actually see your son in your photo there. It's very cute. I didn't even see that at first. Is there a likelihood of him qualifying for protective supervision? Well, Down syndrome is a presumptive disorder. And presumed correctly, you mentioned he has intellectual disability. So that is so most people with Down syndrome are going to check a lot of the boxes for protective supervision. Not everybody, but a lot of the times. And so there's a very good chance. And I'd love to nail that down for you and help you build a plan to go get it. Denise, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. I'm glad this information was helpful. I try. Kuda, I gave proof email correspondences for denying ABA notes and submitted ACMS. The hearing representative told the judge to exclude it as a complaint. I do remember speaking to you about this, Kuta, and there's a lot wrong with this, but we'll have to come back to it. Steph, yes, I had PS for 5 years, and this year it was taken away. Going through the hearing and working with Galt. Awesome. Child is 19. No changes, but the social worker twisted a lot of what I said. So frustrating. I'm sorry to hear that, Steph. I'm glad you get to work with us, though. I'm so happy. Hopefully we get to get some good news for you soon going through this appeal process. But that goes, again, you're right in line with what we're talking about, right? You have used an IHSS decided to take it away. And if you're working with Galt Advocacy, then it probably was removed wrongfully, right? That would be the whole point of us trying to help you. Wishing you the best, Steph. Jessica, King's new IPP is very pretty. I'm meeting with the social worker to work on the language, and it's fluffy. Gotcha. I'm meeting with IHSS. I'm meeting with the social worker to work on the language, and we'll get it to y'all next week to look over. But honestly, if I didn't have Galt Advocacy, I'd be so stressed. Thank you for the kind words, Jessica. Please connect with your advocate on that. Send that IPP to your advocate that you're working with here on our team. Excited for you. Hopefully some good news to come. Jessica, Does ours stop right after denials? Does ours stop right after denials from reassessment, or is there a grace period after you get the hours while appealing? So if you have the hours, Trigger decides to remove the hours, you can file an appeal, and you can also request something called aid paid pending. Aid paid pending will allow the hours to remain intact until you go through the process and get a ruling from a judge. But if you don't appeal it, then the hours will be removed whenever the notice of action says they'll be removed. So the notice of action will tell you the new effective date. So if it says the effective date is February 1st, that's when the new hours will be. If you had 50 hours a month and they want to reduce it to 20, then it'd be starting February 1st, like the notice says, that you'd have 25 hours a month. All right, everybody, we are out of time. There's so many questions I didn't get to. I'm so sorry, everybody. We'll try and go back and answer them as best I can in the comments. But thank you so much for being here. We had a great crowd today. A great way to start 2026. So thank you, everybody, so much for being here. If you speak Spanish, please check out our Spanish speaking page with Nicole. She'll be going live in 5 minutes. So check her out. Thank you so much again for liking the stream and sharing it. I saw a lot of those notifications come up. That's super helpful for us. Along with all the people who are just like you, just trying to learn about these really complex benefit programs and trying to do whatever you can for your loved one or your special needs child. And so it goes a long ways. Thank you so much for watching these streams every single Friday, dropping some amazing questions and points here in the comment section. I don't know everything, to learn from you guys as well. But thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.